As we all know, the Texans defense has been playing very well this year, and Tim Settle is one of the guys who's been putting in a really good effort for the Texans. And it was nice to see, because I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the Pro Football Focus scores, that Tim Settle is the fifth highest graded interior defensive lineman in the league right now. It was a little bit of a surprise just because he doesn't really have gaudy stats. If you look at what his current stats are on the year, I don't have what they are, but they're not gaudy stats. But if you look at the Pro Football Focus interior defensive line rankings, he's graded fifth right now over the likes of guys like even Jeffrey Simmons and Quinnen Williams. I think the important thing to point out here, and I'm going to say some really nice things about Tim Settle here, is that it doesn't necessarily mean he's the fifth best defensive tackle in the league. He doesn't make as many impact plays as a guy like Jeffrey Simmons. He doesn't play as many snaps. Jeffrey Simmons has almost twice as many snaps as he does, but he does a lot of the grimy stuff really well. And I've always kind of had a perception that Pro Football Focus doesn't reward the guys who do their jobs, even if they're not necessarily putting up the stats. I have to recognize that Pro Football Focus has recognized Tim Settle for doing a lot of the grimy stuff really well. I don't understand Pro Football Focus grades, and because of that, I rail against them. It's a golden rule, kids. If you don't understand something, just criticize it and say that it sucks. That's the American way. But if we look at some of the grimy things that Tim Settle does that doesn't necessarily receive a whole lot of recognition unless one of your city's preeminent YouTubers is a former defensive tackle himself. First and foremost, it's the double teams. And if you watch and it doesn't get highlighted on the broadcast a whole lot. Just watch Tim Settle as he takes on a combo block here, holds his spot, has to just keep grinding. You end up getting, now this one, you do actually get the glory because he splits a double team as perfectly as you possibly can. I mean, this is textbook. If you see Tim Settle right there, he's the 3 technique on the left side of the defensive line. And posts up in, that's a genuine combo block, splits it, comes up and makes a tackle for a loss on ETN. That's a sweet feeling right there. Again, versus the Jaguars, sometimes this is the tricky part where you got to anchor in versus a double team, but then that guard to his left is going to come off on the linebacker, but you got to try to keep driving and maintain your balance as that tackle is overtaking you. He does another beautiful job here, splitting it, coming in, doesn't make the tackle himself, but it clears out the way for, I think is that Elshire? Oh, no, that's CJ Gardner-Johnson, formerly of the Texans, currently of the Ravens practice squad. 3 technique here. Drive. Doesn't make the tackle, but he kind of he hip checks his way into being in on the tackle. And then this one I put in just because this shows you how ugly and messy and grimy it can get at times. He's head up on that guard, and he's going to have to try to keep that B gap to his right, our left. And he doesn't do a perfect job of it, but see what happens? Okay, he's gotten knocked out of his gap, but he understands I gotta close that B gap whether I'm in it or not. So he drives back, sheds his guard, ends up getting in on the tackle itself. Just really, really good being aware of what he's supposed to do, how he's going to do it. Tim Settle, 0 sacks on the year, but one thing he's been doing a really good job of is just getting push up the middle. This was the best last week. This play would ultimately be negated because of an offsides, I think, on Will Anderson, but just watch him, drive him back into the quarterback's feet, cause a sack, gets negated, unfortunately. The Bucs game, he did a whole lot of this, just compressing the pocket, forcing the quarterback out. A lot of sacks this year that the defensive ends have gotten are because he just, he's up in the lap of Baker Mayfield. There's no place for Baker Mayfield to go. There's no stepping up. And Danielle Hunter, when you combine that with a really good rush by Danielle Hunter, quarterback gets sacked. Another play, right up into the lap. It takes a little bit longer to develop, but right up into the lap of the quarterback. The other part about this where there's a little bit of a selfless element is that he gets a lot of these bull rushes, and instead of trying to shed to one side, I mean, he could shed either way here, but he's really cognizant of compressing the pocket first and foremost, and you want to be sure that if you make a move as an interior defensive lineman, sometimes you create a gaping hole, like Could Baker Mayfield have run right there? Possibly, but Settle could have also come off his block because he was controlling his guy. I mean, he was still able to run to the outside, but Will didn't get a sack. Will celebrated like it was a sack, but it was actually for a first down. Then if we go to, this is the one thing of his game where I show you all those bull rushes, and he's been really good at it. I do think that he's got room to develop. Let me show a different one. I've got him circled on this one. Okay. This one, he starts off with that bull, but keeps his hands active, ends up snatching. Ball's completed on that, but it was a really good rush by him. I think there's room for him to just hit moves more often, and it's cool that he's doing all the selfless stuff, but he's got the athletic ability to probably get more actual hits on quarterback. This one here. I liked this because this was, as many of you know, I was worried about the traps and wham blocks, some of the misdirection that they do versus defensive tackles going into the Ravens game. This was textbook recognizing that he was getting trapped. If you look at that right guard, the right guard's pulling. He recognizes it, comes underneath it, gets face masked in the process, ends up being in on a tackle with Togiai, who did a good job on this. If you look back, and the Ravens are watching film of last year's Texans game, but also this year's Rams game, similar look on this play. Settle didn't handle the trap well. See, he rushes upfield, gets the same look from that guard. Guard's pulling to the outside, and he doesn't see that he's about to get blindsided by the guard. These guys all have been susceptible to this at times. Settle did a really good job in this game of seeing that guard go to the outside that's over him, turns inside, makes the play. And those guys did a really good job. We're coached up real well last week in doing that. So that's the only bad play I'll show, just to show that he actually learned his lesson and came back from it. Some of the miscellaneous things, just PBUs or pass, like tips the ball there, gets his hands up. This one, I can't remember if he got credit for tipping this ball or not, but this is an ugly ball by Cam Ward, and I think it's duckish a little bit, so almost creates an interception. Let's see, what was this one? Oh, dropping into coverage. I don't know what his coverage grade is, but Mirza becomes a spy, ends up forcing an interception on this play. People ask, why do you drop a defensive lineman into coverage? It's not because you expect him to go man on man with a running back or anything out there, but it's an unfamiliar look to the quarterback. And if you look to the right of your screen, number 4 coming across, and I don't know if he was supposed to yo-yo on that, but he's got traffic in his face that he probably didn't expect either. You saw Pat Mahomes throw an interception in the game on Monday Night Football when a defensive lineman dropped into coverage, because it's like when you put a stop sign at an intersection that's never had a stop sign before. The reason they have to put so many flashing lights around it the first 2 months that it's there is because if you've been driving your whole life through this intersection and there's no stop sign, you won't see that stop sign. So likewise with quarterbacks, when all of a sudden a defensive lineman is dropped off into coverage, they just don't see it, or if they do see it, they don't recognize it. So they've used Tim Settle effectively in pass coverage. Tim Settle versus a screen, another thing he's done well this year. Recognizing and understanding that, all right, he's going to rush the passer. Wait a second, something's not right. Something's not right. I shouldn't be getting to the quarterback this freely and easily. He recognizes it immediately, comes out, ends up getting in on the tackle. And there's one more. Okay, this I want to show. This has nothing to do with Tim Settle himself. No, wait, wrong one here. But this has something to do with what I think hopefully we're going to start seeing more of from C.J. Stroud as he gets more and more comfortable in this offense. So watch Tim Settle here. Jumps off sides, right? Or doesn't get called for it, catches himself, but he got done in by the hard count. So Stafford's up at the line using a dummy count. Gets him with that. But see who else gets gotten with it? Just by a little infinitesimal amount. When you watch both Tim Settle and Jalen Petrie on the hard count, little tell there. Stafford stops a play. I fast forward through the adjustments because I don't want to get copyright striked on this. But what Stafford does is he moves all his wide receivers out, including a tight end, flexes him out a little bit. And Stafford, because he knows that the blitz is on, if you watch Petrie's blitzing, he knows that the middle of the field is going to be open, and boom, there you go. So that's the veteran savvy quarterback stuff that I think CJ is going to keep getting better and better and better at. Part of that is having time at the line of scrimmage to utilize a dummy count and to diagnose who's blitzing. Let me show you one more thing about that play, just from a defensive lineman's perspective. This is what happens. So if you're any one of these defensive linemen and you get that hard count and then Stafford stops and starts adjusting stuff, all you're thinking is like, crap, we're screwed. Because you know they got a blitz on. You know that Stafford saw the blitz that was coming on the hard count. And you still rush the passer and everything, but everything just kind of flames out a little bit. Let me see if we've got any comments up on here. Morning again, Roe. This is really nice, bye week, but time to look over things. Yeah, I'm trying to, if we look at let's look at these real quick. Highest graded. You notice the bottom there, Sheldon Rankins. Sheldon Rankin's been having a good year as well. If you look at the top, you got Malik Collins, you got Tier Tart, former Texans and Texans all over this place. The Texans' strategy over these last few years of getting defensive tackles that aren't necessarily marquee guys, but they do what they're supposed to do, it's worked pretty well. I know D'Amico at some point wants to get a hoss like Jeffrey Simmons or somebody that can be in there all 3 downs and not have to rotate him as much, but they've done a good job of getting the most out of these guys. Sheldon Rankins is both a current Texan and a former Texan, and he's still on the list. So I wouldn't be surprised if Malik Collins or Tier Tart make their way back into the fold at some point. They do a good job getting the most out of them. Like with those bull rushes that I showed you with Tim Settle, that's something that you can do a lot of when you're only playing a certain number of snaps per game. It's hard to lean into the bull rush all the time if you're playing 50 or 60 snaps in a game, but they have all these guys that come in with fresh legs, and it puts a lot of stress on offensive linemen when you have to do that. Let's see. I missed the Second Believe video for the week. I can't seem to find it. I don't know if they put it up. It should be there. I'll try to find it. I'll try to find it and see if there's an issue. Let's go Tim Settle. I wish we had a DeForest Buckner type to take this D-line to the next level. That's the hard part about it, doing a video like this. I hate pointing out that, look, yes, Tim Settle's graded really high, and I'm glad that he is, and he's getting recognized for it. I do think that he can develop into even more. He's 28 years old, and you might think, okay, how much more development is there in him? He has that ability to hit actual moves. It's just sometimes it's intoxicating when you go in there and you got fresh legs and you got a good bull rush working. Like it's hard to come off of that, but that's part of his game, where just keeping his hands more active and just hitting actual moves could vault him up above even where he is right now and get him into some of those conversations as a guy who's a more impactful player. But I'll try to do Sheldon Rankins a little bit later. I mean, I could do Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter and everything, but those guys get so much attention. I want to give attention to the grimy guys. Thanks, everybody.